Hello, once more, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Back here on YouTube, doing week number 3, my 2023 Big Ten predictions. After last week, I went 12-2. My record improves to 22-3 on the season through the first 2 weeks. Surprise, surprise! I didn't even think I'd be good at this a few weeks ago when I predicted week 1, and I've done so good for the first 2 weeks, going 10-1 and now 12-2. Week 3, we have 13 great games this week coming up. Starting with the Friday night matchup in Maryland between the Virginia Cavaliers and the Maryland Terps. So with that being said, let's get started with our Week 3 Big Ten prediction video for this Thursday, for this weekend's games. Well, there we go, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Here we are, Week 3 of the Big Ten predictions. Start out in Maryland on Friday night, tomorrow night over on FS1. Virginia Cavaliers and the Maryland Terps, the former ACC team versus the current ACC team. And this week we have lots of Big Ten ACC matchups, at least 6 to break down. Coming into this game, this is Maryland's first true test of the season, and their final non-conference game. And it's at home against Maryland. It's at home against Virginia, the Cavaliers. Hoping Maryland can come out on top this week with a win. I think Maryland's going to have a close game on their hand this weekend, tomorrow night against Virginia, playing at home. I think Talia Tagovailoa, the quarterback, is going to have to make some big plays for Maryland. He's looking to get 3-0, and I think he will do that this week. And of course, I believe Maryland gets to win at home against Virginia. A tough fought battle. I think it's going to be one-sided, maybe a close game. I think Maryland wins by at least 10 or more, maybe, in this matchup tomorrow night. Moving on to our Saturday slate into the Big Ten. With Wisconsin, the Badgers, taking on Georgia Southern after last week's letdown for the Badgers, as they fell to 1-1 with a loss to Washington State on the road. Wisconsin fans are trying to pick themselves back up. This is a team that's supposed to possibly win the West in a tight race this year between them and Iowa. I still think Wisconsin has a chance to win the West, but Georgia Southern, the last test before they officially move into Big Ten play next week for Week 4. It's going to be a great game to watch. I think Wisconsin's going to get at least 40-plus or more points over Georgia Southern, probably win by 20 or more this week. I'm taking the Badgers and head coach Luke Fickell to get his second win in Wisconsin as head coach on Saturday afternoon. Which moves us on to our next game of the day. The one that's supposed to be on the pregame show for Fox, Big Noon Kickoff, but guess what? Fox decided to pull their pregame show out of Champaign, and they're going back to Colorado. But Penn State and Illinois, it's the game of the week on Fox tomorrow, on Saturday in Champaign. So take on Penn State. Penn State coming in at 2-0, Illinois coming in with a 1-1 record, I think. I look at it. Illinois, who they beat last week? Illinois lost to Kansas last week in the Big 12 game. Going to their second tough game of the year at home this week against Penn State in Week 3. This is going to be a game I think Penn State, the road team, is going to get ahead of the visiting team. Penn State's going to get ahead of Wisconsin, get ahead of Illinois here in this matchup as the home team this weekend, I think, with this matchup. And I think Penn State's going to take this one and really put Illinois on their backs and score more than 28, at least get 35 or more, because Penn State against Big Ten Illinois, this is going to be a Penn State win at least. I remember a few years ago, Illinois won a game in overtime that took 7 overtimes. And the only reason it took 7 overtimes for Illinois to beat Penn State on the road a few years back was the rule changes in college football. And overtime, after double overtime, you go strictly to 2-point conversions the rest of the way. And each team missed 2-point conversions until Illinois got one and won, and Penn State didn't. Failed to get one. But I think Penn State's going to win this one easily on Saturday afternoon. Illinois is going to drop to 1-2 at least in the Big Ten. And Illinois is going to have a less than spectacular season this year so far after Week 3. In our second game of the week, third game on Saturday, Indiana Hoosiers, Big Ten 1-1, taking on the Louisville Cardinals out of the ACC. Now this one is a neutral site game. This one's in Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, home of the Indianapolis Colts. So, yeah, this one's going to be one of those interesting games to see. Indiana coming in 1-1. Louisville, I don't know what their record is. I misplaced my phone for some reason. I thought I had it with me here. I'm going to tell you what Louisville's stats are, but Indiana 1-1 playing at home against Louisville. The biggest story of this matchup is the rivalry between the two. Their border states, Indiana and Kentucky. And Louisville, Indiana, it was announced earlier this week that Indiana canceled the 2024-2025 games. They were supposed to play in 2024 and 2025, one in Bloomington, one in Louisville. And Indiana this week decided to cancel those two games and get out of the deal with the two. So Indiana had paid lots of money to... Indiana had to pay a ton of money to Louisville to get out of those games for the next 2 years after this year. And so I think Louisville is going to be mad about that going to this game. I think Louisville's going to try to beat them, in which I will state that Louisville is going to get a win against Indiana this week because of what happened earlier this week with the storylines of Indiana getting out of the matchups for the 24-25 season. So Louisville's, I think, going to be upset about that. Their players are, some might be from Indiana, so they're going to want to win against Indiana for the last time for a while because Indiana decided to get out of the contract this week for the next 2 years after this year. So I'm taking Louisville because of that. Sorry, Hoosier fans. Moving on to our next Big Ten ACC matchup. North Carolina at home taking on the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Another ACC matchup with a Big Ten team. Like I said, there is tons of Big Ten ACC matchups to discuss this week. This is the second road. This is the first road one for Big Ten team this week. After Purdue went to Virginia Tech last week and got a win. Minnesota 2-0 coming in with a 2-0 record, having to go to North Carolina. North Carolina the last few years, they've been a team that's been in the top 25 at least the last few years under head coach Mac Brown, who came out of retirement, who won a national championship back in 04, 05, 06 at Texas against USC, and took Texas to multiple BCS Bowls in his career as head coach. Came out of retirement to coach North Carolina the last few years. He has them in the top 25. This one's going to be one of those games, a road test for Minnesota. I think North Carolina gets a win, surprisingly, this week in this matchup against Minnesota, because if Minnesota loses, they're pretty much going to have a tough stretch to win the Big Ten West, which they can be one of the teams at the top of the Big Ten West at the end of the year. Unfortunately, I'm taking North Carolina at home against Minnesota this week. Which takes us to our next ACC matchup against the Big Ten. Duke at home against Northwestern. These two teams have had lots of history in the past against each other, and they've played each other in the past quite a bit. And it's no different this week coming in. It's no different about these two teams. These two teams played each other in the past. Northwestern, again, like I said in the preseason, is going to be one of those teams that will win maybe 1 to 2 games this year after going 1-11 last year. And I think this is going to be a game that Northwestern actually loses, unfortunately, because Duke, they're going to get the win at home against Northwestern. We know Duke's a basketball school, but this week they're going to be a football school and beat a Big Ten team. Northwestern is going to have a hard season of losses, unfortunately, I think, because of what's going on there. Moving on from this one, we go to our next Big Ten ACC matchup as Virginia Tech back in the predictions. This time, they're going to Piscataway, New Jersey, the birthplace of college football, between Rutgers and Virginia Tech. And Rutgers, they've showed off a bit the last couple weeks. This year, they're 2-0 coming in. They won their first 2 matchups of the year. Last week, Rutgers won 36-7 against Temple. And this week against Virginia Tech, this is their first Big Ten ACC, first big non-conference matchup. And Virginia Tech only owned one versus the Big Ten. They lost Purdue last week in a thriller which had a 9-hour lightning delay, unfortunately. I think Rutgers is going to do pretty well this game, but Virginia Tech might make this a game. This game is going to be at least a one-score game, I think. But I think Rutgers in the Big Ten gets the job done for the Big Ten to get their second win against the ACC this week on Saturday afternoon, as I take Rutgers over Virginia Tech. Moving on from that one, we're going to go back to the Midwest, come back to the Midwest, my favorite team, the Iowa Hawkeyes, as they take on Western Michigan. And the storyline in this game is Iowa's special teams after last week with one of the number 29, Sebastian Castro for Iowa, who got a pick 6 against Iowa State last week and returned it. He made stops, he made big plays. He also made a tackle to secure the win on 4th down against Iowa State last week. On Iowa State's 4th down play, secured the win. This week it's Western Michigan coming in against Iowa. Some storylines I want to talk about in this matchup is Iowa's 4th time playing Western Michigan in Kirk Ferentz's era. The Kirk Ferentz era, they've met 3 times in the past under Kirk Ferentz, Iowa and Western Michigan. Iowa's only won one of those 3 games because they lost in 2000. They lost in 1999 versus Western Michigan in Kirk Ferentz's first year. Then in 2007, Iowa lost again to Western Michigan. That was a game I was at back in 2007, which was the last game of the season. And then the last time these two teams met was in 2013 when the current Minnesota head coach, P.J. Fleck, was coaching at Western Michigan. That game, Iowa won 59-3. So, as I won that game 59-3, I think I would, with the 4 times the term, I think Kirk Ferentz is going to even up his record against Western Michigan and go 2-2. Against Western Michigan, get a win. Hawkeyes will at least get more than 25 points this week, which is the goal Brian Ferentz needs to do as offensive coordinator to keep his job. But so far, they've had a good season. Who knows if the new athletic director is going to keep that as a rule for Coach Brian Ferentz in this year. But I think Iowa's going to get a win and score more than 25 this week at least. They scored 24 and 20 this year in the 3 games, in the 2 games they've played, but I think Iowa gets more than 25 this week. They at least get 30 plus, I think, this weekend. We'll see about that, though. As I take the Hawkeyes at home. Moving on to another late afternoon game, the last late game of the night. The last late afternoon game of the night, Ohio State Buckeyes coming in 2-0 against Western Kentucky. Against Western Kentucky this week. And this matchup's going to be one of those matchups. Western Kentucky coming in. This is going to be one of those matchups where Ohio State's going to score another 50-plus points in their last game before they go to South Bend next week against Notre Dame. So I think Ohio State's going to get another 50 points this week and outscore Western Kentucky. Because next week, Ohio State has to go to South Bend, get some tough Notre Dame team that they're going to have to win again, try to win against on the road. So I think Ohio State's going to get a job done this week against Western Kentucky before the business trip to South Bend. Moving on from that one, finally we have a Power 5 non-conference game this week, unfortunately. Non-Power 5 game this week, not against ACC, as the Washington Huskies, the future Big Ten team coming into next season. That's right, this was a team, Washington Huskies, they're going to be a Big Ten team next year after being announced earlier back in August that Washington and Oregon are going to join them as well, because last year USC and UCLA did it. This year, back in August, Washington and Oregon decided we've got to prove to join the Big Ten next year as well. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. Michigan State with an interim head coach because their head coach is suspended for sexual harassment issues. Second Big Ten program to have a coach or a head coach get in trouble this year. Third, actually, Jim Harbaugh suspended for doing illegal recruiting during COVID-19, that dead period. Michigan State's coach suspended for sexual harassment, and also Northwestern's head coach Pat Fitzgerald got fired for hazing allegations at Northwestern. So now Michigan State's in the spotlight with the issues with the football program. This is going to be a matchup. Washington has to come in. It's going to be a good test for Washington next year when they actually do join the Big Ten, conference, and they're going to have to get a win this week. But unfortunately, I think Michigan State's going to try to do a good job and get a win. I think Michigan State will show Washington who's the boss and actually get a win at home. After last year having to go to Washington, I think Michigan State's going to get the job done under their interim head coach this week, as Michigan State gets to win there. Moving on to our next non-conference game. Okay, Nebraska go up against one of my other favorite teams. Everyone knows I like Iowa, but did I ever tell you my other favorite team, college football? That's right, the Northern Illinois Huskies this week are having to travel to Lincoln, Nebraska. It's going to be their third trip there in the last 10 years. The last 10 years, at least, for NIU. They're 1-1 the last 10 years that when they go there. This is their third time there. Nebraska comes in at 0-2 after losing to Colorado and after losing to Minnesota on the road by a field goal. This is going to be a matchup where I think Nebraska and their first-year head coach, Matt Rule, this is going to be a good opportunity for him to get a win in front of a sold-out crowd, and I think they will do that, unfortunately, against the Northern Illinois Huskies. I hope Northern Illinois gets to play good, but unfortunately, I'm taking Nebraska to get their first win at home this week. It's NIU, but I think it's going to be a close game, unfortunately, for Nebraska. They're barely going to get it out. They're barely going to get the win, I think, unfortunately, this week. Moving on from there, matchup, we're going into Michigan with the Michigan Wolverines and the Bowling Green Falcons, Bowling Green State. So Michigan, last non-conference game for Michigan this year before Big Ten play. Looking to get a win in their game. And you look at Michigan's first two games this year that I predicted in the Big Ten predictions. I predicted Michigan to win their first game of their, which they did they beat East Carolina. They beat Air Carolina 30-3. Last week they beat UNLV 35-7 last week. This week, I think Michigan's going to do the same thing to Bowling Green that they did to UNLV and East Carolina, where they scored 30 or more and only give up a touchdown or a field goal. So Michigan's going to go 3-0 easily this week in the Big Ten predictions. Which moves us on to our last non-conference game of the week. And Big Ten ACC matchup again. And for this team that we're talking about, Purdue Boilermakers coming in at 1-1 on the year as they take on the Syracuse Orange out of Syracuse, New York. This is another Big Ten ACC matchup. This is Purdue's second Big Ten ACC game this year. All I want to know is they beat Virginia Tech last week, which ruined my streak. But put me in the loss column last week. The first loss in my week last week. I did predict Virginia Tech would beat Purdue. But this week, Purdue's playing Syracuse, which I think Purdue's going to get a win, at least at home, against some ACC teams. So Purdue, surprisingly, I believe this week we're going to win. Which will make them 2-0 against ACC teams as we go from there in the Big Ten predictions for week number 3. With that being said, I'm done with the predictions for week 3. Here's the quick recap. First of all, going Friday night, taking Maryland over Virginia. From there, I'm taking Wisconsin over Georgia Southern to win big. After that, I'm taking the Penn State Lions on the road in Champaign to get a win against Illinois. From there, I'm taking Louisville over Indiana after Indiana canceled future games in 2024 and 2025 against Louisville. I think Louisville's going to beat Indiana for that. Doing that. After that, taking the North Carolina Tar Heels to get a win against Minnesota. From there, I'm going to Duke, North Carolina, and the Triangle, where Duke's going to get a win against Northwestern. From there, I'm taking Rutgers over Virginia Tech in a close game in Piscataway, the birthplace of college football. From there, I'm going to Iowa City, where the Hawkeyes will beat Western Michigan, and soundly at least get 30 or more, 25 or more this week. From there, I'm going to Ohio State and get Western Kentucky. I think Ohio State's going to pile on 40 or more against Western Kentucky in their last game before they have to go to South Bend next week against Notre Dame. From there, I'm taking Michigan State over Washington with an interim head coach, as Michigan State has allegations against their head coach. After that, I'm taking Nebraska in a close one against NIU Huskies. From there, I'm going with Michigan over Bowling Green to get 30 or more and give up one touchdown or a field goal. And from there on, the last game of the week, I'm taking Purdue over Syracuse to get the win, as Purdue will go to 2-0 on the year against ACC teams this season. That's the Big Ten predictions for this week, week number 3. Hope you all enjoyed it. That being said, I hope everyone enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to watch, like, subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends to do the same if they have not done so yet already. And also, don't forget to hit that notification button below so you know when I upload a new video. And with that being said, have a nice day, stay safe, and peace out. I will see you right back here next Thursday with the Week 4 Big Ten predictions right around the corner. Week 4 coming up next week. That being said, have a nice day, stay safe, and peace out. And I'll see you right back here with Week 4 next Thursday. Bye for now and stay safe, everyone.